I worked with a guy with yips who was part of a college golf team that won an important tournament. And he played with some of the guys on tour today who are younger, famous tour pros. And he had short game yips. And even after he had been through my program, working with me in person for 2 days, and we fixed his yips, he would still occasionally hit some bad shots in a round of golf. They weren't yips, but, he was mild flinches. And he would say to me, I think maybe it's mechanics. And he was explaining the shot to me. And it was clear his mind reacted to the pressure, which caused the flinch, which caused the bad mechanics, which caused the bad shot. But he still wanted to hang on to that false worldview that the solution is only to make my mechanics better. That's how powerful that premise is. It's all mechanics 24/7. It's just not true.
Golf Smarter number 791. This week's episodes of Golf Smarter and Golf Smarter Mulligans are brought to you by dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter. Join me and over 4,000 golfers worldwide that make dynamic golfers part of our daily workout routine. Get a 7-day free trial and 15% off your membership with checkout code GolfSmarter. Stay tuned to hear more. How understanding the yips can improve your mental game with our Yoda of Yips, Jim Waldron.
This is Golf Smarter, sharing stories, tips, and insights from great golf minds to help you lower your score and raise your golf IQ. Here's your host, Fred Greene.
Welcome back to the Golf Smarter podcast, Jim.
Always great to be with you, Fred. Thanks for having me back. I don't know, what is it, 27th, 28th episode? Something like that.
Something crazy. All I looked up this time was, what was the first episode we did together? And that was published on December 18th, 2007.
Long time ago.
Episode
14.
number 105. And I think it was like just minutes after the iPhone came out, but still no one was talking about podcasting.
Yeah.
It was part of iTunes.
Yeah, it's really changed now, hasn't it?
Yeah. Well, we've talked about this on the show that golf and podcasting exploded during COVID.
It's been unbelievable.
It's been amazing.
Yeah, it's insane.
I've
been so busy the last year. I can't even tell you how busy it's been. It's insane.
That's phenomenal. I'm happy for you.
Yeah, I'm doing tons of online, real time, like FaceTime or Meetup or Meet Lessons or Zoom. It's just been for people all over the world. I mean, you name a continent, except for Antarctica, I think, was the only place I haven't.
Where the golf courses are supposed to be phenomenal.
They're phenomenal.
I mean, you hit the ball and it just goes for.
And the worst part, the hardest penalty, the hardest hazard is those floating icebergs. They just seem to catch your ball in mid-flight. It's amazing.
Oh, but the ball's moving. It's still moving.
Yeah. You can hit 800-yard drives in Antarctica. The fairways are super long, and they're made out of ice, so the ball just goes. Right?
Oh, yeah, your carry is just ridiculous.
You've heard about that phrase, sneaky long, which is the PGA Tour jargon for the shorter hitters who hit it reasonably long for their size by hitting a low, ropey hook, right?
Right.
Yeah, sneaky long in Antarctica.
It sounds like a new movie with Tom Hanks.
Exactly. It does sound like
sneaky long in Antarctica.
Yeah, like Captain Phillips Part 2.
Well, as far as finding a niche, clearly golf podcasting was something I jumped on real early and was way ahead of a lot of other people on it. But you've also created a phenomenal niche for yourself by talking about the yips. Mm-hmm. And I recently... I get emails, people like, I looked up yips on Google and found conversations with you and Jim Waldron. It's like, yeah,
it's exploded. I think the last one we did, which was maybe 9 months ago, we talked a bit about the yips, but I think we called it the golf global pandemic of yips, which is really true. And
I think we did.
The big thing that I wanted to talk about with you today, because I've been thinking a lot about this, I'm starting to get more people calling me or emailing me. New students who don't have the yips, but they suddenly realize, hey, my mental game sucks. What do I do about it, right? Mm-hmm. So I thought that would be a good topic for today, because if you take the yips as an extreme example of what not to do in the mental game, so you reverse engineer from the yips mindset. That's the ideal mindset to play golf, the opposite of the yips. We could do 18 podcasts on this topic. That's how important it is.
Well, that's how pervasive it is. I mean, so many people are struggling with it and stuff. And I was interesting. I read an article this morning talking about Stuart Sink, who had a recent victory. And one of Sink's lines was, as you get closer to the hole, your expectation level changes.
I saw the same article and I loved it. I was just talking with a student 3 days ago who has a new student who has severe putting yips. We were talking about that. He only has them on short putts within 10 feet of the hole. Oh, wow. Outside 10 feet, never yips. And we were talking about the psychology of why that's so important. And of course, this gets down to sort of fundamental human nature. You tee off from, say it's a super long par 5. It's a 600-yard hole. So you hit your tee shot, and you're not that concerned about getting, you obviously you have a target in every shot, but if your target's the middle of the fairway, you want to hit it out there, say 250 plus. Sure. But you hit it 230 and you're in the first cut of rough. It's not that big a deal. You're not upset. Because it's still within the ballpark of reasonable expectation.
Right.
But when you have to make a 2-foot putt, especially if it's for par or birdie, right? And you miss it because your body is 2 feet away from the end result of the whole golf hole ends right there in that 4 1/4 inch wide hole in the ground. And you miss it from 2 feet. That 2-foot missed putt, that stroke counts just as much as the 250-yard drive. It just stings emotionally when you miss these short putts.
Absolutely. And what's the other thing that's interesting about Stuart Sink right now is the tournament that he recently won. He didn't make a putt longer than 4 feet?
Yeah.
For the entire tournament?
Yeah, but that's kind of set up to be a ball striker's course anyhow. I mean, the greens are.
Is that what it was? Because
at Harvard Town,
how do you do that?
You don't have to hit it long there either. You just have to be really good.
So you just get close to the hole. You're getting birdies by just getting close to the hole.
Yeah.
Well,
I love that he won at 47 on the regular tour. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. That's that's also a testimony to the mental game, I think.
Yeah.
Because you've got all these young players who are in their 20s hitting the ball a country mile. But, and we've talked about this on the show for so long about, do they have the mental capacity to win 4 days in a row or to be there on Sunday afternoon? Right. And how that impacts us as amateur golfers, what we're supposed to be doing, which is just completely unfair.
Right. Well, I think one of the interesting facets to getting back to reverse engineering the yips is there's a true fact about the game of golf that when we were growing up as kids playing the game, it was sort of widely known, but people didn't want to talk about it too much because no one knew what to do about it. And this is an aspect of what I call the mind-body connection approach to playing the game or understanding the game, which is you can get psyched out by a hard hole, when you say like you have a long par 3, like you got 220-yard carry over water and the green surrounded by deep bunkers. And it's a small green in the first place. So it's a hard shot. Even for a tour pro, that would be a hard shot. So what typically happens to amateurs, particularly if they're mid to high handicap amateurs, is it's such a hard shot that they overreact to how hard it is, and they flinch, usually at somewhere in the downswing, which causes them to say hit it, a half inch behind it, so the ball goes in the water. And they might do that on the second shot from the drop zone, if there is a drop zone. They might do it again. So everybody kind of knows that's golf. Something about the hole psyched you out, right? It triggered some form of stress or anxiety, which caused a body muscle to tighten up, which the old school term was that's a flinch. I flinched on that shot because the pressure got to me. Right. So in our generation and all previous generations, that was a known thing. Although people didn't know much about what to do about it, because this is in generations before sports psychology for sure, or where even today, I mean, the average person today, if you did a survey of the population, I don't know what the exact stats are, but I'm sure more than 50% of the population has never been to see a psychotherapist, to do psychotherapy.
Oh, sure.
Still a relative minority of the population. Mm-hmm. But there's a body of knowledge from psychotherapy, particularly modern psychotherapy, to distinguish it from classical Freudian or Jungian psychoanalysis. Modern psychotherapy is basically more well known as being cognitive behavioral therapy, or NLP, neuro-linguistic patterning, things like that. They're sometimes called brief therapy. And when you go to a cognitive behavioral therapist, he doesn't say to you, tell me about your mother. He doesn't care about your relationship with your mother. It doesn't matter.
Talk
whether
about
you had a great
stereotypes.
relationship or not. We don't care, right? What matters is, what are you doing right now in the present moment? How are you using your conscious mind? How are you processing thoughts? How are you dealing with emotions?
You've been talking about NLP forever.
Yeah, I trained at the NLP Institute of Oregon like in 1993 or 1994.
Okay.
Got my diploma on the wall right over there.
There you go.
But the point is that most people in our generation and older knew about psychotherapy, but really didn't know what it was or had never had any formal experience with it. So they just knew that their mental game was not good. And they hit a certain number of bad shots in a round where they would flinch in response to stress or pressure, right? And in fact, the only popular sort of solution to the stress and pressure for our generation earlier was alcohol. And there was a tour pro who wrote a book about this, a guy named Frank Beard. You golfers my age will know who Frank Beard was. I don't remember the name of the title of the book, but it was about his life on tour. And he got relentlessly criticized by his fellow tour pros because he let out the dirty little secret. This is back in the 60s. That the way not everybody, but a lot of players dealt with the stress and the pressure of playing on tour in the 60s is they drank before the round started. They drank at the turn. Sometimes they put a flask of whiskey in their golf bag, so they were drinking during the round. And a lot of guys who weren't drinking were taking Valium. They were taking tranquilizers to deal with the and they obviously worked. I mean, that's why they kept doing it. They did have an effect on dampening down anxiety and stress, right?
Sure.
But in the modern era, in the sort of Generation X and millennial generation, there's this completely insane idea that every bad shot is only caused, not even primarily caused, only caused by bad mechanics, as if your mind, your consciousness, your emotions had no impact on your golf swing mechanics or your putting stroke mechanics, which of course they clearly do. When you succumb to stress or pressure, muscles tighten up that shouldn't be tightening up. And if that happens sort of randomly and, not all the time, but maybe 15, 20% of your shots in a round of golf, you flinch. And it's not like a flinch that's so bad that you hit the driver like 80 yards offline, which would be a true yip. In other words, a flinch is a mild intensity yip, and a yip is a high intensity flinch. Mm-hmm. They're all on the spectrum, right? So someone who has severe yips, he's flinching severely and a lot in terms of frequency. And as someone who doesn't have the yips, but he's an average golfer, they're flinching on maybe 3, 5, 6 shots per round, maybe more, right? But it's not recognized as being a mild intensity yip. It's just sort of, the stress got to me, the pressure got to me. Well, the solution is the same. It's just more of an extreme solution with someone with severe full swing yips or putting or short game yips compared to someone who flinches. But the cure is basically the same, which has a lot to do with understanding how your psychological state, both thought process, focused attention or lack of focused attention, and emotions influence physical behavior. I mean, stand-up comedians, they flinch. They forget the bit. They get so nervous that the audience hasn't laughed at the previous 3 jokes, and they're thinking, oh my God, I hope they laugh at this next joke. Oh, what is it? And they freeze.
Wow. Wow.
That's why, as you probably know, in show business, the people who are admired the most as far as being courageous performers are stand-up comedians.
Of course.
Right? Because they're putting everything on the line in front of an audience. And sometimes the audience laughs and sometimes they don't. So
they get instant feedback on failure.
Yeah, that's right.
And success.
That's right.
Hey, listen, we're going to take a time out. We'll be back. I have a question based on something you said earlier. We'll be right back. If there's one thing about Golf Smarter that surprises me, it's the wide range of ages that are drawn to our interviews. And mostly what I hear from golfers over 50 is that they're losing distance, and how can I get that back? And from golfers under 50 all over the world, the question is, how do I gain more distance? But every single one of these golfers wants to hear about a new club, a new swing, a new ball. But let me tell you a secret that I've learned from having conversations with golf instructors who work at driving ranges, public courses, private clubs, and even with tour pros. There's one basic tool you already have that will increase the distance you want and the distance you've lost. It's your body. You don't have to let age get in the way of a powerful golf swing. You need to fight back aging by increasing your flexibility and mobility. That's why I'm so excited to introduce you to dynamicgolfers.com to get you on a training program that will have you hitting the ball better and having you feeling better when you're not on the course. I've been on the Dynamic Golfers Functional Mobility Program every morning for a number of weeks now, and over the next few months, I'll be sharing my own experiences with Dynamic Golfers on both Golf Smarter and Golf Smarter Mulligans. Their targeted mobility and stretching program for golfers can accelerate recovery, eliminate hip and low back pain, and restore a healthy range of motion. Dynamic Golfers provides daily video routines that are only 15 to 20 minutes long, and each video targets muscle imbalance specifically designed for golfers. And that's what impressed me the most. After years of searching, I've finally found a morning workout program that's going to help this aging golfer's body. And for only $9.99 a month, you can join over 4,000 golfers worldwide that make Dynamic Golfers part of their daily routine. And they've even created a custom landing page for us at dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter. Go there now to get a 7-day free trial and 15% off your membership when you check out using the coupon code GolfSmarter. So please, check them out today and let me know what you think. If it's easier to remember golfsmarter.com, do that. Then just click on the banner at the top of our homepage. But don't forget to take advantage of their discount offer. Use the checkout code GolfSmarter at dynamicgolfers.com/golfsmarter. We thank them so much for their support, their interest, and for helping us feel better. I want to go back for a second based on something that you said that about current day belief is that it's always going to be mechanics that made a bad shot. Mm-hmm. Is that because, or is this contributed to, growing up watching golf on television and hearing analysts and seeing slow motion of the shots? You know, they're not talking about, oh, he may have been distracted. They're not talking about he's still thinking about that putt that he missed on the last hole. They're just looking at the physical aspect of what they can see and what they're talking about.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
Okay.
Certainly the TV broadcasts influence that. Although, you know, it somewhat depends who you're talking about. So I really like, the two main analysts right now, who are Nick Faldo and Paul Azinger. They have particularly Azinger has a very sophisticated understanding in line with my thinking on the mental game. And they do talk about how stress and pressure affect. Johnny Miller also did before he retired. And when he first started out in the booth, he was criticized by his fellow tour pros for using the choke word, the C word. But that's what it is. When you succumb to pressure and you flinch, you choke. Now, I don't like the fact that there's sort of a widespread sort of macho, overly critical view of that as if it's a moral failure or a weakness of character. That's just ignorant. I mean, we know from neuroscientists that some people are born, the way their brain is hardwired, they're called hypersensitive individuals, right? Some people are just hardwired to choke more easily than someone who is the opposite. So some of it's the DNA you're inherited with, that you're born with, right? Some people just are less reactive to stress than other people. And it's nothing to do with how strong your willpower is or how good a person you are or how strong you are. It's nothing to do with that.
My eyes are popping out of my head. Really?
Of course not. Everybody's, unless you're a sociopath, which most people are not, right? And even sociopaths, even though they're evil and they have no conscience, they're trying to do their best, or whatever it is, whatever evil they're trying to do. One of the basic truths of human nature, and it's widely known in psychotherapy, is people are always trying to do their best. Not always, but 90% of the time or more. They're trying to do their best, right? no one's going out there and deliberately hitting bad shots. Everybody's already trying to do their best when they play the game, or when they're doing stand-up comedy, or when they're performing, playing a musical instrument in front of an audience. No one's trying to fail.
Sure.
But the fact is, certain people's brains overreact to stress or pressure more than other people.
Wow.
That's just the way it is. Like, my daughter is a great example. She's this incredible, successful attorney. She's been an attorney for 6 years, went to the U.S. Supreme Court and won.
Wow.
She's only been an attorney for 6 years. She graduated top of her class at Berkeley Law School. Yeah, she's a brilliant attorney.
Oh, that's awesome. Congratulations.
And she played high-level sports in high school and college, and she was, the straight A student all through high school and college. And she just doesn't understand the concept of reacting to stress. She doesn't happen. Especially when she's doing any kind of performance, she just gets into the flow state, the so-called zone state, naturally. But other people, they don't have, and again, some of it's the training I gave her as being her parent.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what's your influence on something like that? That just
I can see it in my grandson.
Innate.
He's the same. My little 3-year-old grandson's the same way. He's already, I could mention before we start recording, he's already doing improvisational comedy at 3.
Give me an example of that. What do you mean by that?
He does impressions.
Of whom?
Of animals and a few people that he knows. Like, he does an impression of me. He does my impression of me doing Stephen Hawking.
Oh, that's not nice.
I understand that golf is a very hard sport to be consistently good at. That. So,
right.
He's doing stand up
because he gets a laugh and he gets the reaction, right?
I have a video I'll share with you later when he's 16 months old doing knock jokes.
Oh my God!
That he had learned at daycare. He does 10 minutes of knock jokes.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, it's hilarious.
Oh, I can't wait.
But the point I'm trying to make is back to golf. Some people are born with hyper-reactive to stress brains and nervous systems. Mm-hmm. That doesn't mean they're going to be a victim of that for the rest of their life. There are really cool techniques that I teach people for how to deal with stress and pressure so it no longer has a significant impact on your performance, whether you're doing golf or any other sport, or whether you're doing comedy.
Does it include mechanics in doing this?
No. It's 100% psychological. Now, my yips cure has a mechanical aspect.
Aha.
Specific to
That's what
yips.
I'm asking. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, for yips, for sure. One of the 4 pillars is mechanical changes. And especially, I work with, we talked about this last time. I'm getting more people now with short game yips than with full swing.
Oh, sure.
It's reversed in the lab. I mean, you would not believe the number of people who are contacting me with severe short game yips. So for those guys and gals,
I wouldn't be surprised if it was some Golf Smarter listeners.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Definitely.
That's how they find us. Yeah.
Yeah. That's how they find me. Yeah. But if you have severe short game yips, I've worked with some tour pros, who, if you didn't know they were a tour pro and you saw them hitting a chip off a tight lie, even on the practice area, not even on the golf course, you would think they were maybe an 8 or 10 handicap at best. And not when they're yipping either, when they're not yipping.
Wow.
Meaning the way the short game mechanics has been taught, I think, has been completely wrong. It's been taught as a smaller version of a full swing. And it's just not true. Most of what the short game mechanics are very different than full swing mechanics. The tempo's slower. The rhythm is slower. Obviously, the backswing is usually shorter, and therefore the finish. And how you use your wrist is different. And the kinematic sequence, which is the sequence of energy transfer in the forward swing, is very, very different, especially on a chip compared to a full swing. So I teach the short game mechanics as you have to think of it as a standalone set of mechanical fundamentals. Now, for sure, there are some commonalities with full swing, but there's more differences than commonalities for sure.
Wow.
Yeah. So for short game yips, I tell people, look, there's the bulk, 95% of the actual program has to do with psychological changes, right? And that really does help, especially in the short term, to get people to stop yipping, or at least yip less frequently, really fast. But long term, the reason people get all yips, but especially short game yips, is because the mechanics suck. So they hit so many bad shots over maybe 10-year timeline. They finally hit another really bad chip shot because they have terrible mechanics. not a yip. But they realize after that non-yipped bad chip shot, oh my God, I'm just terrible at this. And then the next chip shot is when the yip shows up. So the yip shows up as a replacement for confidence. Once you achieve a state of zero confidence, you hit rock bottom. That's when the yip impulse always shows up. And the main reason why it's more common now with short game yips than any other type of yip is starting about 15 years ago, it got really common for golf course architects. This is mainly started even longer, 25 years ago with Pete Dye courses and with Jack Nicklaus courses. They put these sort of semi-raised greens, but they cut the grass about 20 yards around the green, really short, like almost as short as the green surface, the putting surface.
Right.
And they're called closely shaved chipping areas. And that's why I'm working with tour pros who got short game yips, because they tried to hit a chip shot off of that tight lie in a tournament, and they hit like, if you hit a quarter-inch fat on that type of lie, the ball's not even going to make it to the green. You're going to just chunk the crap out of it.
Right.
Or if you try to sort of slide the club end of the ball, which people do, then they flip their right wrist, then they scull it, and they blade it over the green. So even for tour pros, it takes exceptional technique off that tight lie. And that's often how short game yip starts, which is why it's exploded, because those types of greens are everywhere now. Those closely shaped chipping areas, they're all over the place.
Yeah.
All over the world, right?
Yeah. Most people try to putt from there.
Yeah.
Let's take another time out. I have another question when we come back. We'll be back right after this. Our latest episode of Radio Baseball Cards is going to be a real treat for San Francisco Giants fans as we hear this unbelievable story from former manager Hum Baby Roger Craig.
Here's another radio baseball card. In 1969, Roger Craig was flying to Caracas, Venezuela to manage winter baseball when he found himself involved in international politics.
Well, we were up in a plane about an hour. I'm sitting there talking to my players, and this guy walks by me and hands me a note. So I turn around, and he's walking in the cockpit, and I saw him reaching here, and I said, man, this guy might be for real. So about 5 minutes later,
If you're a fan of baseball or of history, or especially of baseball history, follow us and enjoy these amazing and amusing stories as told by the greatest players of the 20th century. That's Radio Baseball Cards with Don Drysdale from wherever you find your favorite podcasts. Do more people recognize that they have the yips, or is it the other way around where they just think they suck and don't realize that they have the yips?
Yeah, it's more the second. But when it gets really bad, it's when
suck.
they call me, when they contact me. Yeah. In other words,
at what point do they realize, ooh, I must have the yips?
Well, again, you got to think of it as a spectrum, right? So, for example, I would guess, just after a lifetime, 60 plus years in golf, my general sense is that probably if you define a yip as a flinch, which again, flinch being mild intensity yip, then 99% of golfers have the yips if you define it that way, which is they flinch always to some extent in every round of golf. In other words, I've only met a handful of people who will honestly say with accuracy that they never flinch in a round of golf. So if you define it that way, which again is an extreme way of defining it, then because it's almost like saying if you're human, you're going to flinch in a round of golf. It's just until you have formal training and how to control your mental and emotional state, which is what I do. I train people how to control themselves mentally and emotionally so they don't flinch. Yeah. So like the average person you play with is probably flinching if they're a 15 handicap or higher. They're probably flinching to some degree on like 80, 90% of their shots, putts, short game shots, full swing shots. And you can kind of see it because when you look at these guys and gals' practice swings, what you're seeing is the absence of a flinch. People go, oh, your practice swing looks much smoother than your ball swing, right? Now, in the case of someone with severe yips, though, the difference between their yipped swing and their non-flinched practice swing is like, it's like not even in the same universe. It looks like I sometimes joke that's people who have severe yips compared to their practice swing. it looks like they have a psychological disorder called multiple swing personality disorder. Because how could that be the same person who just did the practice swing? And of course, the famous example is Charles Barkley. When he does his 2 yips, he has 2 yips. He has a top of backswing yip where he goes to the top and stops and freezes.
Right.
Then he goes halfway down and stops and freezes.
Right.
But when you look at his practice swing, it looks like maybe an 8 or 10 handicap swing. You don't see any flinch at all. So the ball makes you flinch.
Last year when they did the match and he was the X factor, his swing looked okay.
Yeah, he's making progress on it. He's better than he used to be for sure.
Yeah. Do some people just do they overblow the yips in their mind? Do they just go down a deep, dark rabbit hole of
oh my God, and oh yeah,
really?
I don't know if overblown is the right. I mean, what happens is, yeah, I guess overblown is what literally is happening, but it's almost hard to expect that someone would. In other words, when you start to realize how often you're yipping and how badly you're yipping and how much it's hurting your score, you start to have anxiety about the fact that you're yipping. So in other words, first level baseline yips is you're having anxiety about the fact you've been hitting some bad shots lately, right? And then once you sort of self-identify, it's not just bad shots caused by bad mechanics. It's bad shots caused by a combination of bad mechanics and bad mental game. And I'm not just in the flinching category because everybody knows, again, people don't like to talk about, but everybody age 40 and older knows that flinching is a thing in golf, right? The millennials haven't accepted it yet. But when you start to realize, I've crossed that tipping point from flinching once in a while to full-blown yips where muscles are, I've had people who yip drivers so bad that they sprained their right wrist and couldn't play for 2 months. The muscle contraction is that powerful that they literally sprain their wrist and they have to wear a soft cast for a couple months and can't play.
Wow.
That's how quickly and how much a muscle can spasm in a fraction of a second with severe yips. So now that guy goes, holy crap, I'm a yipster. And now I feel bad about the fact that I'm yipping. So now you got baseline yips plus your mind reacting to the fact that you recognize you have this affliction, which makes the yips worse. And so I always tell people, you think you're pouring water on the yips fire, you're actually pouring gasoline. So how your mind reacts to it absolutely makes it worse or makes it better, depending how you react, right?
Right.
And, so much of it, I had a new yip student yesterday, and I was explaining all this sort of basic theory, and he said, it sounds kind of like Alice in Wonderland. I go, I know. So much of what I talk about and what the cure is exactly the opposite of what your common sense would tell you. And we've talked a little bit about this before, but it's worth mentioning again that I use the analogy in speech pathology. One of the known triggers for stuttering is the effort to not stutter. So when some people who stutter try not to, let's say they're speaking fluently for 5 minutes, no stutter, which might be a pretty good amount of time for them not to stutter. And they suddenly realize, holy crap, I haven't stuttered in 5 minutes. Gee, I hope I don't, and then the stutter kicks in. So the brain creates the stutter in response to the thought, I hope I don't stutter. Oh. And it's not the only trigger for the yips, but a very common trigger for the yips is the effort, especially with any kind of emotional intensity, to not yip. Yeah, so when you try not to yip, you actually trigger it. It creates the very thing you're trying to prevent.
Sure, and I've heard so many stories of people who have severe stuttering issues, and when they sing, no problem.
Choral speech. Nobody stutters with choral speech, or when they recite the Pledge of Allegiance in school. Not even singing. Just if you speak with someone else, with a group, people don't stutter. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Oh, that's very interesting.
So golf is like golf yips is like golf stuttering. That's one way you can think of it.
I like that.
Yeah. So
that's really direct.
Right. So one of the cures is, I tell people, well, there's 2 exercises. One is called establishing the carefree mindset, which is a big chunk of the cure. And I'm giving you a very shorthand, encapsulated version of this. But basically, what I have people do is I have them say to themselves at the very beginning of the routine, something like this: I'm a yipster in recovery. I've had the yips for the past 5 years, and about maybe 70% of my driver swing, because this is a guy with driver yips, I yip. Therefore, I might yip this swing I'm about to put on the ball here, right? But I don't yip 100% of the time. There's a 30% chance I won't yip. But even sometimes when I don't yip, I can still hit a bad drive. So there's only 3 possible shot outcomes. I'm going to hit a bad drive caused by a yip. I could hit a bad drive caused by a non-yip, just poor swing. Or I could pure it right down the middle. I'm okay with any of those 3 possible shot outcomes. Let's see what happens here. So when you give yourself permission to both fail with a yip, fail without a yip, and you give yourself permission to succeed, you lower the emotional intensity threshold to the point where it's less likely that a yip will be triggered in the first place. So it's when you embrace the reality that you might yip, that your body may yip this next swing coming up in a few seconds, and you're emotionally okay with it in advance, the likelihood is you're not going to yip, or at least you're not going to yip with high intensity.
Failing is okay.
Yeah. So that's counterintuitive, right?
Sure.
But back to today's topic, I teach non-yips people to do that. The only difference is they don't say I'm a yipster in recovery. They say something like I'm a human being and I'm not a perfect golfer. I'm a 12 handicap. And I do miss-hit a lot of these shots. So it could be one of those shots. This shot outcome could be terrible, 20 seconds from now. Or I could hit it really good. Or I could just have sort of an okay miss. I'm okay with all 3 of those. Let's see what happens. And so when you take emotion away from performance, your performance always goes up, always gets better, always.
All right, let's talk about mental game mastery right after we take another break. Our 2 months featuring Tony Manzoni was a huge success, but now let's get back to the main purpose of Golf Smarter Mulligans, which is to feature the older, information-rich conversations about game improvement that are no longer available on any podcast app. And we get right back into it with the first of 2, with someone who is a very special guest and a huge treat for me, Stan Utley, a winner on the PGA Tour and someone who Golf Digest named America's 50 Greatest Teachers in their 2019-2020 list. A few of his current and former students include Jay Haas, Sergio Garcia, Paige McKenzie, Darren Clark, Rocco Mediate, and Bill Haas. And we spoke to him in 2009, just after the release of his book, The Art of Scoring.
I love stealing little quotes and ideas from my friends, and Jim Hardy's one of my best buddies. And one of the nuggets I pulled away is he said one time in a story that the target may be the greatest interrupter of good golf. His point in saying that was that we're playing a game that requires you to swing in a circle. If you lean toward the target, if your hands drive out toward the target, if the club head swings out toward the target, you've interrupted the natural circle. So for me, I swung on the natural circle with my short game. But I knew as soon as he said that, my long game, which is the part of the game I had struggled with a big piece of my career, I was moving my body and my club too much toward the target. I wasn't just swinging in a circle and letting that take care of the ball flying where I was looking.
That's part 1 of 2 with Stan Utley this week on episode 107 of Golf Smarter Mulligans, being released this Friday. Both Golf Smarter and Golf Smarter Mulligans are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. Please follow both so that you can get a brand new episode of either when it downloads to your favorite listening device. Jim, it is always so, not just fun, it's just so educational when we sit down and have these chats. I just love it so much.
Yeah, I love it too. It's a blast. It's fun.
Oh, good. I'm glad you enjoy it as well, because I feel like I'm just sucking it out of you.
No, I can talk about this
draining
stuff.
You of all this amazing information that
Fred, I do this all day long on the webcam, sometimes on the phone, in person, in Portland or in Hawaii in the winter. And I'm always in bliss talking about golf. I never get tired of it. I've been talking about it since I was 10 years old, and I'll be 69 this year. No, well, I'll be 70 this year.
It's why I keep, congratulations. It's why the podcast continues to keep rolling, because it doesn't go very far where I start going, should I still be doing this? And it always comes back to, I'm learning so much and I'm having so much fun with these conversations.
Yeah.
I just want to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. So let's go back to Golf Smarter really was based on the beginning of, if you have a strong mental game and you understand course management or strategy, you can lower your scores faster than if you just work on your swing mechanics. Because when you're working on swing mechanics, you may not see results for months, if not even longer. And that's if you're working on it 8 hours a day. I mean,
that's right.
You see tour pros who are like making swing changes, and it takes them a while to get back into a groove if they ever do.
That's right.
But if you have an understanding of a mental, and sometimes we call it an strong emotional game, you can really improve your game much faster.
Well, there's in the Buddhist tradition, which I come out of, having studied Zen Buddhism from a young age, including with one of the top teachers in the world, and also Tibetan Buddhism. It's a big deal. And, if you look at the early Buddhist scriptures, you see the term dispassionate all the time. And in Buddhist philosophy and psychology, it's recognized that a lot of human suffering that's created for oneself and the suffering you create for other people is because of surrendering control to negative emotions like anger or fear or greed, right? Or any kind of reactive to stress. When you're stressed out, people lash out. They say things they say cruel things that in retrospect they wish they hadn't said. So there's a whole category of human suffering that's caused by the inability of that person to handle negative emotions in an efficient way, right? And that's what I teach. That's part of what I teach people to do in the mental game. Is you have it's not that you're not going to feel stress, although it's possible to do that. It's very, very advanced. It's that you're going to feel stress or pressure or some level of anxiety because you're out there playing a game you love and you want to perform well, obviously. Otherwise, you wouldn't be there in the first place, right? So you want to hit the ball well. You want to hit successful shots that go to your target. But if that desire to be successful is too powerful, too high of an intensity level, it actually triggers your body to flinch, which again is a mild intensity yip. Right? Which means you don't hit the ball. So in other words, the desire for success inhibits actual success.
Wow.
And in the same way, fear of failure inhibits actual success. So to play your best golf, you've got to find a way to, again, ultimate switch off. Like today, the best in the world at that for sure is Brooks Koepka. I mean, he's made veiled references to this, but I know what he's talking about when he gives interviews. He didn't used to be a great player. He came out of nowhere about 6-7 years ago. He started out in the Asian Tour, struggled, then he made some success, got on the Challenge Tour, which is the European sort of whatever they call it now, the Korn Ferry Tour, I guess. And then he made it to the European Tour, and he really broke through over there. And then he came on the U.S. Tour and started winning like majors like right away. Well, how does he do it? He's learned not to attach emotion to shot outcome and therefore score. So when he hits a really bad shot, you don't see much of a reaction at all. And when he hits a really good shot, you don't see him pumping his fist and getting super.
Yeah.
He tries to maintain an even keel. And that's something I teach people to do proactively.
I think we did a show, not you and I, but I did a show years ago, and the title of the show was NATO Golf, NATO, not attached to outcome. Correct.
That's right. That's so important. It's one of the fastest ways to get into that flow state of the zone of peak performance, right? Mm-hmm. But you can apply it off the golf course too, right? You can learn to be less reactive emotionally off the golf course, and it'll make you a better human being. It'll make you a better husband, a better wife, a better parent, a better grandparent, a better boss, a better employee. Your relationships with other people, your relationships with how you manage your physical, mental, and emotional health will all become better when you no longer allow emotions to run your decision-making and your behavior.
But sometimes it doesn't feel like it's the emotion that's dictating it. It feels like the mechanics that's dictating the failure.
Well, certainly mechanics. I mean, don't get me wrong. As you know, I teach mechanics too, right?
Sure,
I'm a
of
golf
course.
pro, right? So you can definitely lower your score by making radical changes to short game technique, putting technique, full swing technique. It just takes a long time. That's the only downside, because your subconscious is stubborn. If you got a habit of, say, coming over the top on transition in your downswing, where your shaft steepens by, say, 20 degrees, which is that's like one of the most common flaws for mid to high handicaps, and you've hit thousands of shots doing that for the last 15, 20 years, it's not going to go away right away just because you know it's wrong. It's going to take a lot of hard work to change those transition mechanics to get the shaft to actually flatten a little bit, which is most good players historically flatten the shaft by about 10 or 15 degrees. There's significant geometric and application of force advantages to shallowing the shaft a little bit, but it takes time to do it.
Yeah, now I need to stop you right there because we're looking at each other as we're recording this, and you said flatten the shaft, but I think you need to explain that because there's some people going, what's that mean?
All right, well, there's this concept in modern golf teaching called shaft plane angle, which means if you think of high school geometry, there's in two-dimensional flat surfaces you can draw, pen or ink on a page. Mm-hmm. If you draw a line that has an angle to it relative to the bottom of the page, say let's call it a 45-degree angle, more or less, not exactly, but when you set up properly to a golf shot, your club shaft what looks from behind, from down the line, to be at about a 45-degree angle, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. If you were going to design a robot to hit a golf ball, and we actually have one, but it wasn't designed based on human anatomy, right. So it looks like a machine, not a human.
Iron Byron, is that what you mean?
Iron Byron, right? So Iron Byron, its shoulder, its arm, and the club shaft are all in the same line, the same plane. So it's very simple. But we're not. We have our arms hanging down from our shoulder socket. Our torso is tilted a certain angle. Our arms are at a different angle, and so we have three angles. We have a club shaft angle, an arm angle, and a torso angle.
Well,
so it's much more complicated.
Now I apologize for interrupting, but isn't that how Bryson DeChambeau sets up?
Yeah, he's trying to get close. He's not exactly like Iron Byron. He's moving toward that more of a single plane idea.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. But the point is, you can't make a huge variation in how that shaft plane angle will move throughout the swing. If the angle changes by more than a few degrees, it's going to be tough to get it back on the original angle you had it on at setup. So you want your angle of the shaft at impact to be close to what it was at setup. And average golfers don't. It's like 20 degrees steeper typically.
But isn't that an argument for single length irons?
It is an argument. I just don't happen to agree with it because there's. First of all,
that's what I'm playing with right now.
On that. First of all, the single length that's been around in my lifetime. That's the third iteration of it.
Sure,
it's not a new idea.
No, it's not.
There were companies back in the 1950s who made single length irons.
Right, and until somebody picks it up on the tour, no one. Well,
DeChambeau's doing it, but he's not doing it 100%. I mean, I think all his irons starting at like a 4-iron. Are the length of I think it's either a 6 or a 7 iron.
Yeah.
Mine are. But we could do a whole show on that. But the point is, you want to swing the club more or less through 3-dimensional space on more or less the same angle that it sits on its setup. It just makes it more likely you'll make center face contact with the proper angle of attack. The angle the club head approaches the ground. Mm-hmm. You're more likely to have the club head path be neutral. Not in to out, not out to in. And you're more likely to hit the ball solid if the shaft plane angle when you strike the ball is about the same as it was at setup. But again, that takes practice. Mm. It's not the fastest way to lower your score. If you could break 100, the fastest way to lower your score absolutely is learning the mental game. But the problem is most golf pros don't know the mental game. I had a conversation with a new Yips student the other day who told me her significant other is a golf instructor, and she had concluded rightly that she had the yips, and all the advice she got from her significant other was practice mechanics more, which doesn't help. So that's what I mean about there's widespread ignorance, particularly among younger teaching pros, 40 or younger, because they were brought up in a culture where every shot is explained in terms of swing geometry, like we just talked about, shaft plane angle and body mechanics. And the idea could influence it. I'll tell you an example. I worked with a guy with yips who was, I won't tell you because of confidentiality. I'll just say he was part of a college golf team that won an important tournament a while back, a few years ago. And he played with some of the guys on tour today who are younger, famous tour pros. And he had short game yips. And even after he had been through my program, working with me in person for 2 days, and we fixed his yips, he would still occasionally hit some bad shots in a round of golf because he's human and the pressure. They weren't yips, but, he was mild flinches.
That's golf.
Right. And he would say to me, I think maybe it's mechanics. And he was explaining the shot to me. And it was clear his mind reacted to the pressure, which caused the flinch, which caused the bad mechanics, which caused the bad shot. But he still wanted to hang on to that false worldview that the solution is only to make my mechanics better. That's how powerful in the under 40 set. That's how powerful that premise is. It's all mechanics 24/7. It's just not true.
Amazing. So if people want to reach out to you and discuss this further with you personally and take lessons from you, and even whether it's online or in person, how do we get in touch?
BalancePointGolf.com.
And the contact information is going to be there.
Yeah. You can call, you can text, you can email.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm pretty busy right now. I'm doing I do webcam lessons. Like when I'm done with you, as I mentioned, the electrician's coming to talk about replacing my breaker panel in my old house. But after that, from 2:00 till 6:30, I have lessons, and most of those are, about 2 out of the 3 are with Yips people.
Wow.
So I do mental game instruction and I do Yips instruction a lot online. And then, of course, I'm starting for the first time. It'll be a year and 4 months of no in person. By the time I start back at Quail Valley in Portland on June 14th, it'll be almost exactly a year and 4 months since any in-person teaching. That's been a weird year.
That is amazing. Well, listen, just because you're busy doesn't mean people shouldn't reach out to you and set up an appointment. Please,
of course,
get in touch with Jim. It's Jim Waldron, Waldron, and he's at balancepointgolf.com, and he's one of my oldest golf buddies on the podcast, and I really appreciate your time, your expertise, and your friendship.
Well, thank you, man. Likewise, it's been fun. I really enjoyed the time. It's been fun. Thank you.
Well, the countdown is now officially on for episode 800, and it's shaping up to be a really fun celebration. Now, episode 800, I still blows my mind when I say that. Episode 800 is going to focus on our greatest lessons and takeaways from 15 and a half years of Golf Smarter. Now, in addition to me sharing what I've learned, because you've asked me to, I really want to hear from you. If you have a question for me, or you'd like to share your greatest takeaway from Golf Smarter, here's all you need to do. Call our Golf Smarter hotline at 415-761-1498 and record your best story, lesson, or ask me a question. Deadline to submit your call is at close of the 2021 U.S. Open. That's Sunday, June 20th. Again, the toll-free number to call is 415-761-1498. 415-761-1498. I'll continue to remind you as we get closer, but start thinking about it now. And when you're ready, call 415-761-1498. I'll leave the number in the show notes and a link at golfsmarter.com. Please follow at Golf Smarter in social media. Check out our video episodes tease on Instagram. And, that's a great way to share and introduce your golf buddies to Golf Smarter is by sending an Instagram to them, forward it to them. Also, or just forward the episode you're listening to right now. That's the easiest way. Anyway, Golf Smarter TV is on YouTube. And if you have any questions, comments, or suggestions on what you'd like to hear on an upcoming interview, I'd love to hear from you. Just click on the Hey Fred button at golfsmarter.com.